welcome back to Courageous Conviction. Eric here. Want to just discuss a little bit today. I've been talking to people about what's going on economically, politically. The wars, rumors of wars, and things that are taking place here in our country now with politics and things. Seems to be the rule of law isn't functioning. The lies and deception, everything of the woke movement, the LGBTQ movement, everything, how everybody's just adapted onto this bizarre, wild, far out ideology, and that's what that is, ideology. Same with all the ESG, all this whole climate change ideology in business. It's actually only caused business to go broke, and the facts behind that are even very questionable as to really, are we in this type of crisis? Remember that Marxism itself always stated that you never let go of a good crisis, never let a good crisis go unwasted. In other words, take advantage of every crisis you can. And we saw that recently with the lockdowns. This crisis hasn't let up. So where's this all coming from? Some people will say, I have some really good sources, and those sources often say, well, there's no centralized conspiracy. Yeah, there's groups conspiring, but there's no centralized conspiracy. It's not like coming from one big source that is centralizing conspiracy. Well, there are others out there saying, well, it's coming from the World Economic Forum, United Nations, World Health Organization, International Monetary Fund, and others that are these non-elected organizations that consider themselves as global governance. They've existed for many years, NATO being one of them if you want to get technical. However, is there really a conspiring group? In other words, is there one group that trickles down to all the rest of these other groups that lead them out to act and do the way they're doing and what they're doing? Well, if we know the Book of Mormon and look at the Book of Mormon, for example, it talks about secret combinations, and these secret combinations come back to a centralized group. Now, there's some splinters, we could say, there are different type of secret combinations, but the objective is the same. And I would venture to say now, and with the information I have and from all the studies I've done, that there is a centralized collaborated effort that has been that way for many, many, many years. And you can go all the way back to 1970, 71 with Klaus Schwab. Now, ironically, Klaus Schwab organizes what we call the World Economic Forum, right, to bring together all the global elites, the global wealthy that are on the same page, that want to save the planet from the peon people like us and govern us in the way that they feel we should be governed and the freedoms that we should have, so that we don't destroy and implode on ourselves. That's the whole idea behind what the World Economic Forum was created to do. Now mark this, that was created in 1971. You can go do your homework on this if you want to. Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, punch it in, even Google, I think it still has the facts on that. Though Google is not to be trusted anymore, as we know that, nor AI. Those are all pre-programmed. Look, something else took place in 1971. We went off the gold standard, and that allowed then what we call today inflation. So inflation is really a way government can steal money from us. And just a short little example of how is, if you have inflation at let's just say you have a 10% tax basis, right? Or a 10% tax on a sales tax. Let's just use a round number for now. That was kind of high here in the US, but in other countries it's not. And we're getting there. Let's say you have a 10% tax on a sales tax. With inflation, the sales tax doesn't have to go up. So the government doesn't get nailed or get looked at as a bad guy. What they can do is just give away money, print a lot of money, and spend that money irresponsibly, giving it away to other countries, if you will, and lining their own pockets also, if you will. I digress. Back to inflation. What would happen now if the price of a loaf of bread was $1 and you have a 10% tax on it? You have 10 cents, right? But if inflation can double and the price of a loaf of bread is $2, but you still maintain your tax basis at 10%, what are you going to pay now? Because that price went up in inflation is actually double what you paid before. You won't be paying 10 cents anymore, you're going to pay 20 cents. So you see, it's a stealthy way for governments to steal money from us. Now you have this administration saying that in 2025 they're going to roll out a new tax increases, the highest tax increase ever in the US. And they're also going to tax unearned capital gains. In other words, if you have assets that are over a certain value, you can be taxed up to 25% on that. And that's actually realizing the actual earnings. You could lose it the next year, too bad. So he lost it now. Basically, what would take place is it's a way to steal our property. Now, remember that things got so bad because of secret combinations, and I want to make a note that the Book of Mormon makes clear that who actually catered into the whole secret combinations gaining power were the attorneys and the judges. And we're seeing that same thing take place. We've always seen it take place in Latin America, but we're seeing it take place now in America. Now, ironically, you're seeing that take place with also certain groups of people that used to do this stuff in Latin America, such as Colombia, for example. And you can do your homework on that and you know what I'm talking about. I have to be careful here of what I'm saying on these channels. What I want us to go back to is, where's all this coming from? Where's this stem from? This all stems from the war in heaven, the pre-existent war in heaven that we all fought on and we took a stand on. Some of us took the middle ground and just stood next to the Father and thought, yeah, I'm going to take the Father's role just to be obedient in that, but I'm not really sure. Others were kind of caught in between, like, yeah, I think I'm leaning that way, but I'm still going to do this. And others were out there in the front lines battling for the Father, saying, absolutely not. This is wrong, you guys. You need to wake up. It was a battle of words. It wasn't a battle where we had guns and weapons and artillery, etc., that we know of. From my understanding on this, and this has empirical data behind it, it was more an ideological battle. A lot like we're facing today. And I would venture to imagine that it was just as absurd as we're starting to see today. Now, this is in Father's presence, which means that agency must always exist, even in Father's presence, and which is an interesting topic to understand. So it's so important that agency exists, and freedom is the underpinning of that agency must also then exist for Father's plan to fully be developed. I want to read something here from Jesus the Christ, all right, which is a book that even the missionaries took and take in the mission field. And this is going to be on page 16, and it's in the footnotes, if you will. It's the primeval council in heaven. I'm going to go to this last paragraph, and it's going to talk here about this council that took place. And it says, but Lucifer wanted to introduce a plan contrary to the will of his father, and then wanted his honor. So he wanted Father's honor. In other words, he really thought he could actually dethrone God. He thought that he was actually wiser and smarter than God. Kind of sounds like those same elites today that think they're wiser and smarter than God and have basically dethroned God here on earth. And that's one of the reasons why America is currently being invaded, is because the prophecy states in the Book of Mormon that we would be overrun by Lamanites descendants as a young lion. Or in other words, Lehi stated too, in another case, that we'll be overrun by other nations and lose our inheritance. In other words, lose our property and our property rights. That's taking place today, by the way. There's also a great gathering taking place. We hear a lot about General Conference from our prophet, so forth, the gathering of the stakes of Zion, etc., and safety in those stakes. Okay, well, I lived in those stakes, and I'm just going to say this much. There is no guarantee that you can go to church in those stakes. And there's no guarantee for safety because a lot of your self-defense rights are taken in a lot of these countries. Now, I lived mostly in Latin American countries, but I studied. I'm an amateur archaeologist, and I studied for 25 years in many, many different countries, archaeology, and doing a lot of Book of Mormon research and so forth to see, just to go back and find footprints of Book of Mormon peoples to try to show people and convince people in these upcoming trying times that we felt were coming, to give something to hold on to. And I think that's something very important. And we're gonna grow this channel with that. I just want to do this though, to not make this video very long. Let's continue reading. He said here, I will save every soul of man. Sounds familiar, right? We're going to be saved from ourselves. Everything's about our safety. All these new laws, all these new rules, even the lockdowns and so forth from the jab, everything's about our safety, right? It's going to be, but we had to get it. It was obligatory. Keep that in mind, okay? Wherefore, give me thine honor. He wanted to go contrary to the will of the Father and presumptuously sought to deprive man of his free agency, thus making him a serf and placing him in a position in which it was impossible for him to obtain that exaltation which God designed should be man's through obedience to the law which he had suggested. So now, Lucifer wanted to make us a serf. In other words, something we just followed, other people looked out for us, and there was no agency in this. Now, there could be a limited agency in what we're hearing now from the World Economic Forum, and from the United Nations and from the World Health Organization. These three are collaborated together. They've all got teeth, all have agreements and arrangements. There's a whole ESG proposal out there. You can look that up yourself. That's collaborated between them, the IMF, etc., and others, that they want to bring about a global governments that is for our protection, but it's going to take away our agency. And one of those is the central bank digital currency, which this morning I was just actually doing some studying. They hope to start really rolling out. It's already been rolled out since of June of last year. That's 2023. They hope to roll out a currency that's going to be digital. Now, it's crypto. And a lot of people are confused. I'm hearing this stuff about, well, say crypto's a Trojan horse. People don't understand. Decentralized crypto is impossible for the government to control. Now, the Bitcoin ETFs, where money managers like BlackRock buying in, they could actually control the market in essence. They can make it run up and they can sell a bunch off and make it crash. That they can do. And other cryptos have been pinned to that, to Bitcoin going up and down. But you're starting to see these meme coins, these others that's kind of like taking off on their own. Even Dogecoin, for example, they kind of have creating their own different ecosystem and breaking away from Bitcoin. So decentralized crypto is going to offer us some bit of an option with a decentralized digital currency. Now, they're both blockchain, but one's decentralized and one's centralized. We'd be very clear on that. So anything that's decentralized is going to have agency in it, is going to be then supported, if you will, by our Father in heaven. If it's decentralized, or if it's centralized and it does not have agency to it, that is going to be supported or then driven from the opposition to our Father in heaven. That's going to be Satan. That's pretty clear. Now, that's a very brief breakdown of it. However, I wanted to say this, that they want to make us serfs, as Satan wanted to make us serfs. So we need to be very careful when we're biting into all this climate change propaganda. Is it really true? Or is it the fact that we've been warming as a world for thousands of years now, coming out of the Ice Age, which you might want to look into? And is there consistencies? Just in the back in the 1970s, the scare was we're going to freeze, the planet's freezing. There's this one Christ on top of another. Marxism stems from that whole ideology of taking freedom from people for the betterment of the people, making us serfs. That is not of God. And we need to be careful of that come election time this year. This November is going to be very pivotal. And the only way that we're going to be able to secure the individual that we feel could represent that freedom is to come out in numbers, in masses. Otherwise, the way things are set up with the computer systems, the way things are set up with the way that the ballots are tallied, etc., it's skewed to lean one way. There is some theft out there, and this is dishonesty. A lot of dishonesty taking place. I live with this stuff for 20 years in Latin America. I saw how this works, and I'm watching this unveil even here today. Now, I might get striked out or get a strike for this on this channel. So please do us a favor. Start following us as well on Rumble or on X. We're there as well. These videos also go up on Spotify, but they're just on voiceover. So do us a favor. Like this. Get this out to people. Subscribe down below. It's free. We really appreciate it. We have a lot of messages we want to get out to people, trying to help people understand what's really going on out there. This is not fictitious. This is not my imagination. These things are things I spend hours a day studying and researching. I travel around. I do the research. I talk to people. I talk to experts on both sides of the fence so I can get the real good idea of where they are. The bottom line is this. If it supports agency, then most likely it's supported by a Father in heaven. If it doesn't support agency, then it's definitely not supported by our Father in heaven. That's a pretty easy factor to decide in. So, Courageous Conviction, we'll see you. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in our next video.